Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next Tea Time episode. Today we're talking about Beyond Bits and Bytes. It's about transformation, but the title already tells it. It's not only about technology topics. And we're going to talk today about the aspects that are relevant as well. And therefore, I brought with me Nora Dietrich. She's psychotherapist and organizational designer. Nora, thanks for being with us today. And Jonas Niessen, he's director cloud adoption at T-Systems, and he has a lot of experience in these projects where it's not only about bits and bytes. Welcome, Jonas, as well.
Thanks a lot for having me.
So let's start with the first question. This is a more general one. I'd love to hear from your side about the constitution of transformational attitude in organizations. This has changed a lot during the last decades, of course, but probably you have also some points to share with us when we're talking about, let's say, the last 5 years or since the pandemic. Nora, would you say there are some special things to mention with this question?
Yeah, I think there's one main point that I really love is the rising awareness that transformation is really needed, that like seeing the future doesn't mean changing it. And it's really about changing it now and like translating the future opportunities into the here and now. So I see a lot of, especially traditional organizations, really daring to lean into change. When it comes to restructuring, new business models, new ways of thinking and behaving, sustainability. So there's so many trends out there that really shape and form the way we go about the future today. Of course, these transformations are a little bit exhausting, especially entering a pandemic where we then also entered one of the biggest experiments in the working world in a long time, which was hybrid working or remote working. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on out there, but what I feel in most organizations is that there's some sort of enthusiasm. Yes, we're tired, but we're also enthusiastic because we felt throughout the pandemic that we're actually capable of changing when the pressure is high enough, so that we can trust our people, that we can change systems and processes within weeks if we have to, and stop just discussing them and starting to do them. So yeah, I think there's both.
Okay, thank you. So good news, basically. Or at least for the beginning. Let's see what follows. Jonas, from your side, would you say that there's some special points when it comes to transformation issues within organizations during the last years, which changed like really drastically?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like organizations always had to transform, right? And there are great and many examples out there. One of my favorite examples is the company Nokia, which throughout its lifetime has produced like everything from rubber boots over toilet paper, obviously mobile phones. And then, as we know, they kind of missed the rise of the smartphone and now have pivoted to focus more on telecommunications infrastructure. So whilst transformation was always necessary for organizations to survive, essentially, I think what changed is that transformation has significantly accelerated and now also obviously is increasingly digital. And what we've seen, especially during, the last 2 years during the pandemic, is that it was a factor for acceleration. It was definitely effective for acceleration. So what we've seen, I think, in the beginning in March 2020, that organizations were for a short period of time in a state of shock, and then followed by a short phase of reorientation, and then a significant acceleration of transformation. And we've obviously all know how the pandemic has completely changed and turned around how the way we work, and has transformed many sectors, including, for example, the hospitality sector, which had to adopt very, very quickly. So yeah, definitely great to see how such external negative events can, on the other hand side, drive and accelerate change.
Mm-hmm. So good news here as well. I'm trying to find the sweet spots of transformation, and I have a hypothesis when it comes to these questions. And one of the probably most interesting aspects, at least for me, is the question: how can I confirm? And one of the most important questions, at least for me personally, is how can I bring people on my side when it comes to transformation projects? Because what we have here is the unknown. And as far as I know, no one really turns into the unknown with high pleasure. I mean, everyone wants change. Everyone has really fast ideas about it's better when we do this and that. But going the road down intentionally is a totally different thing. So is this something mankind and organizations can cope with this unknown, Nora? Or do we have that challenge and we simply have to face it?
So I think humankind was always amazing at change. I mean, just look at where we're heading now with Web3 and Metaverse. I mean, we just create new worlds all the time, and we have for the past not only decades, but centuries. So I think it's something that is inherently human, is to change. But of course, if you ask me, okay, do you want to lean into this project and do everything differently, learn all of these new skills, and you don't really know where to head? I'd probably say, no, thank you. So I think like what we have to understand is that we have this innate drive for certainty, for control, for security, which is a basic human need, which is completely fair and is something we have to also incorporate into our changing structures. So what can stay the way it was always, or what can we maintain because it really made us the organization we are today, even though we might have to change parts of it. So really make sure that you give people a frame of stuff that will stay, but also that gives them a security because this is already clear. So basically just the orientation piece. And then, of course, make sure that you also integrate the second basic human need that always comes up in change management moments, which is flexibility and autonomy. Can I make my own decisions? Can I co-create this change? Will the team I'm going to work in still be my team? Will the organization still be the organization I worked for the past 20 years? So is this something that I can hold on to, or at least that I can create with, so it feels like mine? I have ownership. Like ownership means to own something. It belongs to me. So I feel like we need to give people a good mix between that frame of orientation and the wildness inside, like how you get there is partly on you. We're going to support you, but you can co-create that change. And I think like my favorite question when it comes to uncertainty is one that Esther Perel asked throughout the last 2 years. And she asked, okay, how can we stay grounded when the ground is moving? And I feel like this is exactly what change is. The ground is moving. Like there's a lot of tension. There's stuff going on. Like we cannot pretend it's all fine and secure. But the question is, how do we stay grounded while, trying to maneuver through this? And that's a sweet spot we have to find as organizations. And for me, it's all about emotion, like the emotional part of change and the empathy we need as an organization with our people.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful one. Jonas, probably your scope within a transformation project is probably not the emotional one, but would you agree with Nora that this is a crucial aspect also for your daily work?
I absolutely agree, and I would even argue maybe it is part of my work, right? So in my experience, cloud transformations do not fail because of technology issues. Like cloud transformations and cloud adoption does fail because organizations do not change their culture, do not change their organization. And this is super crucial. So leaders need to be aware that they take their employees on a massive change journey. So they need to be aware that all of their employees will go through different stages, and they have to lead their employees through these different stages of change. And there's a great TED talk, by the way, by someone called Jason Clark on embracing change, and that goes into a similar direction like what Nora just mentioned. And essentially he says that real cultural change works, whereas fake structural change does not work. So if you are able to convince your employees and convince your organization that you're genuinely offering change to break down silos, to increase agility, to create psychological safety, and encourage more innovation, like who wouldn't be on board with that, right? So I highly recommend to check Jason Clark out. But then obviously the challenge is how to implement that, right? So setting this vision is important, being serious about driving this change, being open and communicating that change with the employees, but then breaking it down. And this is where I see most organizations fail.
Seems to me that this is a really huge challenge, because what I've learned so far is that we're not talking about one project. I mean, if we're talking about cloud adoption, right? But that we're more talking about like 3, 4, 5 projects that go parallel, like the cultural change, it's leadership thing, it's the technology aspect. And of course, why we're doing this because of the change of business models. So this is another project that goes parallel. And it's really obvious for me that most people in their role are simply not skilled to have this as a responsibility within one person. So is there kind of a blueprint or a template that you would recommend to others, Jonas, before they start with the project and simply feel overwhelmed with all these questions that they simply cannot cope with them?
Yeah, I think there's not one model that applies to everybody, but there are different models out there that can work for you. So I think the first step is to, like when we talk specifically about cloud adoption, the first step is to recognize that cloud adoption is only a means to modernize your IT and to accelerate transformation. So organizations want to increase agility, drive innovation, as you mentioned, like develop new business models, and cloud is a great tool which can get you there faster. And in the end, what you need to do is you need to create a culture of experimentation, right? So in order to innovate in cloud, again, fits very well into that story. In order to get there, you really need to give your employees in the organization a North Star. So define a mission that really matters. You need to change your organization and culture and encourage continuous learning within your organization. And then lastly, you need to create psychological safety, to create this environment that allows your employees to continuously challenge each other, but also build on each other's ideas. So it's this level of discussion that you need to have within your organization in order to truly successfully transform, and also in order to truly successfully adopt cloud.
Nora, I'll hand this over to you in your role as an organizational designer and as a psychotherapist. Do you agree on that? And B, would you add something looking at your own projects with organizations? Is this kind of a blueprint that works also for your topics, or is there any specificity that should be added here as well?
So I think one of the main things I do when I work with teams is that I mainly work with leaders first. So the question is, how can they learn how to guide people through the emotional part of change? Because they're not therapists. Usually they're not even coaches, that might be an IT engineer, very senior, very like great at their expertise, but now the whole human factor comes in and they're like, I haven't learned this. And I don't even have the time to have all of these conversations to actually pick everybody up where they stand right now and to guide them on their own little path. Like, how do I do that with all of these multiple challenges I have to face every day? So usually I take them aside and I try to show them and guide them through what's going to happen, why people are resistant and how we can look behind the curtain to understand what is their true pain and what is the answer we have to find as a team to solve that pain to some extent. Or how can I engage people? What motivates them to actually do change? Because people don't know these things. Like, how would they? So I think this is a major layer of my work. And also, starting before we come up with the big strategy is to really ask, okay, people, what is on your mind? What are the fears you have when you think about that transformation coming up? Because we know from like tons and tons of transformational projects, humans are not like that individual. Like we still have the same fears and the same fear of losses. Might it be the loss of identity? Like, is the company still the one I wanted to serve, basically? Or the loss of competence? Do I even have those skills? Or am I capable of learning those skills to stay part of the team and stay part of like the expertise layer in my organization? Or might it just be purpose? Like, does it make sense to me what we're going through here? I don't get it. So there are a lot of losses that we can already just expect, like as part of the human nature. And then we don't have to be surprised and like helpless, what do we do with it now once it's in the room? But to literally be a bit more equipped before we lean in. And to understand that it's completely normal to have this messy middle where we just don't have all the answers yet. And that's completely okay. Just let people know, like just be respectful enough and build that trust that you will keep them in the loop as much as you can. So this is what my work is mainly about. It's really about the emotional side of things and making it normal, that it is stressful and messy sometimes.
And both of your perspectives are really interesting for me, because I'm asking myself, does it make sense, or would you recommend to let the decision makers do it on their own? Because their daily agenda is fully packed. There's so many strategic questions. They're concerned with so many different aspects. And now you both kind of said there's so many skills you need to add for a successful project like that. And for me, it sounds really like a no-brainer that this is exactly the reason for not going down that road alone, but really intentionally bring in people to have this like distanced view on things, to add in the skills that are needed for the projects, and also the expertise from all these frameworks that are out there. And this is not an editorial. This is simply kind of an observation that this is definitely one of the points where bringing in new people definitely makes sense. Or is this too like black and white talking here?
I mean, I think like management teams and leaders need to figure it out, right? You can't outsource cultural change. So in the end, it's definitely the leadership team which needs to adopt, which need to, and I like this this word coach that Nora used, because modern leaders need to become coaches for their teams, stand at the sideline and allow their teams to shine, enable their team. This notion of a servant leader, right? So yeah, this is nothing you can outsource, and this is what you need to figure out within your organization. But obviously, what is possible is to get in help and get in support and get in not only for the leadership, get coaching, which is super helpful to accelerate this cultural transformation, but also for your own teams, right? When we look at cloud adoption, bring in external cloud architects who have the knowledge, but not in order to build a complete new organization. Bring in external talent to allow your organization and your own teams to learn quicker. Because this is what you need to build on, right? You can't just build a complete new organization from scratch. First of all, you won't find enough talent within the market. So it's a super scarce market at the moment anyway. Plus, obviously, it's your existing employees who have like all the knowledge, how your organization currently works, who your customers are, and your teams will know what has to change in order to be more successful in the market.
Nora, would you say that this is the question I've put, like bringing in external expertise, is something that's accepted already well, or is it more like people are getting it slowly within the discussions, for example, they're having with you? What's your experience and your role in these projects then?
Yeah, I think I have a bit of a survivorship bias, because of course the companies that reach out to me, they're willing, to get support in for these like very human parts that we usually neglect, because like there's so many other strategic goals we have to focus on. So the humans, they will manage themselves somehow until they don't. So of course, like my point of view is like that like I just work with organizations who are ready to do that and willing to get someone in who is both like the good cop and the bad cop, you know, who's like normalizing that change is really hard, but who's also pointing out that you used the word add, you know, usually we add layers, we add processes and structures and new ideas, but we never like sit down and get rid of old stuff, you know? So we call that organizational debt, which is basically like technical debt, you know, like we do a quick fix, but we forget that now people have to do it like in 3 different tools until we really trust the new tool, you know, which of course takes a lot of time away from their hands. So it's good to have an external person who maybe dares to say, you know, you can do it this way, but then it just won't be great, you know, like it's your decision. But if I can recommend something, it would look different, which a lot of maybe team members are not yet courageous enough to say because they fear the consequences of losing power or losing, you know, reputation or what it might be. So I feel having a good mix of someone who can guide you, but who's leaving again is really, really important. And having worked in a consultancy, what I don't like is when organizations try to outsource it in a way that they pay consultancies for years, you know, they pay like a big group of change makers for like 5 years, but never ever the team inside is really allowed to learn, you know, and to fail, because it's always like pointing to the consultancy taking care of it. And that's just short term, yeah, quick wins, but it's not sustainable and it doesn't transform the organization, which I think is what it's all about. So yeah, having internal people supported by a coach that also leaves again is truly important, like in psychotherapy as well. I don't want them to come for the rest of their lives, you know. I want them to learn the stuff, go and learn again and try to practice. And if they need me again, I come in, but not for the rest of your life.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. There was something you already mentioned right now here, a very interesting question for me personally, at least, working with 3 different tools at a time. When I think about these transformation processes, it's something that I believe that matters a lot, like breaking down the boundaries of collaboration. Since on the one hand side, you probably can decide on your own what's the way to go and how to do it. But I believe it's always much better, and basically you confirmed it already, to have all the involved units and people who need to support you, who need to open the doors, to provide the data and stuff very, very early on. And is there a way or a phase where you both would say this is when you should break down these collaboration barriers, and this is how it works? Is there a kind of best practice for all the people out there who probably experience exactly this situation?
Yeah, maybe I'll make a start. So like when it comes to cloud adoption, there is a best practice, and it's like it's often called something like a cloud center of excellence. Like there are different terms for that within different organizations, but I think cloud center of excellence is the most common one. And it's a super helpful tool in order to drive organizational change, because like if you want to truly transform your organization, and I've stressed that, right? If you truly want to become more agile, like break down communication barriers, establish a culture of innovation and experimentation, then your organizational setup will have to change, because this transformation is so fundamental. And one way to approach that is to build a nucleus from which you can spread out this change within the organization. This is called the Cloud Center of Excellence, which is in essence, to start with, it should be a very small cross-functional team where you have all the relevant functions, including IT, business, HR, finance, because all of that will have to change when it comes to true cloud adoption. That helps you to fulfill your business goals faster. So finance has to rethink how to allocate budget in the future, right? How to work with these new pricing models that are available in the cloud. HR has to rethink how to establish this culture, which kind of new skills are required. I mean, we talked about the new skills that are required in leadership teams, but the same applies within technology teams who are now moving much closer to the business, right? And like IT teams, which there's this obviously this term of DevOps, where teams now have to come together and better understand each other in order to collaborate better. So yeah, Cloud Center of Excellence is definitely a good starting point. And then ideally, what this team would do is really to enable the rest of the organization to work on a couple of lighthouse projects and quick wins that can demonstrate to the rest of the organization, hey, there's actually something to it. This change might actually work. And we see already a couple of advantages, and thereby get more and more people on board for this journey, which will be a continuous journey in the end. So yeah, Cloud Center of Excellence would be my recommendation to start.
Thanks, Jonas. I'm glad to hear that there are indeed very tangible points you're mentioning and how it really works. Nora, same question for you. Is there any kind of template that really works for, let's say, everybody in such a case?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jonas said, which is just create a positive interdependence within a group. So make people learn through the experience that it's really, really a positive gain to have multiple perspectives looking onto the same project. Because what we learned in silos is that we all share a similar point of view based on our expertise. And now all of a sudden I come into a mixed, diverse team, which has far more skills and know-how about what happens if I decide something in finance, what impact does it have on business development or even the IT engineering side of things. So we have to learn that we are all one. And if we want to drive projects in a very successful manner, that we need all those perspectives to know the risks, but also to know the potential quick wins that we are craving so much. So I think that is one very essential point, is give a team a good reason to work together, even though that might be uncomfortable in the beginning because they don't have their way of working yet, and coach them to their best way of working. And I think the second layer is really create formats where this happens naturally. So make it part of the meeting agenda to come together as a diverse team and discuss challenges together. My favorite example is the Brain Trust of Pixar, one of the most successful animation studios. And they created the Brain Trust, which is basically brains from all departments and of all years of experience coming together to look at one idea together and be very candid, honest, but also cherishing of what the team created already. So there is this trust within the team that we can fail together. But there's also this idea of multiple heads potentially create more good ideas that we can combine and make the most of a project. So yeah, one is a good reason. Make it do it through experience and create formats where this becomes alive.
All right. Thank you so much, Nora. Positive, good news from your side as well. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've learned today at Tea Time is that indeed IT transformation projects as well are much more than bits and bytes. And I'm really glad that we've learned so many really tangible things you can really do to make this positive project. And we want to go further with that. We want to invite you to Accelerate Digital now on February 22. This is where you learn the most relevant trends for your business, what works, how it works, why it should work as well for you. So join us. It's for free. If you didn't register yet, please do that. And Jonas, Nora, thanks so much for your time being with me today. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.